beautiful piece, Tachzor, Come Back, was written by Israeli composer Idan Reichel in the days after the Hamas attack of October 7th. For all of us who yearn for peace, that day was a devastating blow. And certainly for those who devoted much of their lives to the pursuit of peace, such as our most honored guest this evening. Ehud Olmert served as Prime Minister of the State of Israel from 2006 to 2009. The child of parents who fought in the Irgun for Israel's establishment, he was first elected to the Knesset in 1973 as its youngest member at the age of 28 and was re-elected 8 times representing the Likud party. Then in 1993, Mr. Olmert was elected mayor of Jerusalem and re-elected in 1998. In 2003, he returned to national politics, holding many senior ministerial positions, ultimately serving as Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's vice prime minister. And then following Mr. Sharon's stroke in 2006, Mr. Olmert became acting prime minister, before that March leading the centrist Kadima party and its coalition to victory as the 12th prime minister of the State of Israel. He guided the country through the Second Lebanon War, and he worked tirelessly toward a peace agreement with the Palestinians, and in so doing became a personal hero of mine. Those efforts included the 2007 Annapolis Peace Conference hosted by George W. Bush and came so very close to a comprehensive agreement it is painful even to recall, given where we are now. Today, Mr. Olmert is working to promote efforts to end the war in Gaza, as well as to restart negotiations to conclude the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the basis of a two-state solution. His recent memoir, Searching for Peace, tells of his personal journey and provides an open window into Israel's history, peacemaking, U.S.-Israel relations, and the future of the Middle East. A second edition, touching on October 7th and beyond, will be published next month. The Prime Minister joins us tonight with his daughter Michal, with thanks to the Jewish National Fund for bringing him to us. Please welcome the Honorable 12th Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Ehud Olmert.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rabbi, for your gracious words. And thank you very much for this fascinating ceremony. As you know very well, we are not accustomed to have these kind of ceremonies in Israel very often. And I wish perhaps we would have somewhat more Reform synagogues in our country to allow more and more Israelis to practice their beliefs and their Judaism in somewhat different way, which is absolutely Jewish, as we all are here tonight. Thank you very much. You mentioned before that this last week was heartbreaking, terrible, indeed, totally unexpected. Last Friday, we were certain that within a couple of days, will have these 6 young people with us, back with their families, back with all of those who were waiting for them for such a long time, praying that they will go through all the pains and miseries and tortures and inconveniences, to put it mildly, underground in the tunnels in Gaza. And it was so heartbreaking on Saturday evening when we started to get this news. And you know, Israel, everyone knows everything immediately. You don't need to wait. Good news, and unfortunately, most of the times, bad news. And so, the week ended with this terrible, sad story of these 6 young, wonderful people that were massacred and murdered in the most brutal manner by the Hamas. But perhaps when we talk about this last week, we do not give the proper emphasis to the fact that it has been a whole year that we have gone through this terrible news. That while we may have not always heard about the loss of the hostages, we were losing soldiers that were fighting. And we were still grieving and will be grieving for some years to come those who were massacred and butchered and beheaded and raped and tortured on the 7th of October. So, quite frankly, last week was terrible. Last year was terrible. And what we have to ask ourselves now is, what comes first? What now, at this time in life, is the most important thing for the state of Israel, for the people of Israel? What do we have to achieve now before anything else? And I think there is a growing number of people that feel strongly that while we still have terrorists around us that need to be taken care of, what now is the most important mission for the state of Israel is to bring back the hostages to their homes, to their houses, to their families. There are 101. And I must tell you, and obviously you can imagine that a former prime minister may still know more than the average person. But between you and me, not only that the former prime minister doesn't know, even the present prime minister doesn't know how many of the 101 are alive and how many of them are not. And what's worse is that we don't know how many of them will be alive tomorrow and how many of them will not. And therefore, the responsibility that we have to do everything in our power is to make what now some people call it, in the most irregular, political media term, a deal. We have to make the deal. whatever and however you call it, we have to make it. And I heard that there is a monumental problem that prevents the accomplishment of this mission. And the problem is called the Philadelphia Corridor in the south of the Gaza Strip. Now let me tell you something I can share with you. It's a state secret. So please, don't spread it. I'm familiar with Philadelphia intimately. I know every meter of the Philadelphia corridor. I've been dealing with it when I was Prime Minister and I was fighting against Hamas in Gaza. And to be honest, Philadelphia is an important part that is the border between Gaza and Egypt. But had someone said to me then or since then that the existence of the State of Israel and the security of the State of Israel and the strategic political interest of the State of Israel depends on a corridor of 14 kilometers that separates between Gaza and Egypt, I would think that he was telling me a joke. Had someone told me that the lives of 101 people depends on the importance of the corridor, of the Philadelphia corridor, I would have thought that he is really ridiculing me. Now, I don't want to get here and now with you into this argument how important every section, every part of Gaza. I know that the lives of 101 people is more. And there can be no excuse that can justify leaving them there and not making the necessary essential effort to bring them back. I was charged several times over the last few weeks in Israel when I argued this by people that say to me, you, when you were Prime Minister, you refused to release Gilad Shalit, an Israeli soldier that was abducted by the Hamas, and he was kept not in a tunnel, in a relatively comfortable circumstances, in Rafah for a period of 5 years. And indeed, I refused. Because what Hamas then wanted was absolutely unacceptable and intolerable. They wanted that I will release hundreds of killers with blood on their hands against one person. And trust me, the meeting with his parents, when they came to me, were amongst the most difficult, heartbreaking meetings I had as Prime Minister. Parents were sitting opposite me, and they said, we don't care. We don't mind. We want our child back home. And I say to them, you know, as parents, you are allowed to ask for everything. No one can dictate to you what is the price for the lives of your son? From your point of view, there is no price. And you are entitled to ask for everything. If necessary, to release 10,000 prisoners, murderers, killers of Hamas in order to free your son. But I am not a parent. I am a prime minister of the state of Israel, and I have to look at it not only from the point of view of the personal fate of one person, I have to look at it from the personal fate of hundreds that may become victims of these murderers that will be released in order to carry on the murderous actions against Israelis. And my friends, that's what happened. Hundreds that were released in 2011, including Yahya Sinwar, the greatest leader of the Palestinian Hamas murderers, were taking part in October 7 and until October 7, and they were responsible for the killing of more than 250 Israelis over the years from 2011 until 2023, and then from. So this is a dilemma which is not simply resolved, but any attempt to draw a comparison between the case of an individual person that was a soldier that was sent by us to fight with the potential risk of not coming back, which is the essential part of the bond between the army and the country, is not the case that we are talking about. The 240 Israelis that were abducted by Hamas were left without defense by the state of Israel. They were taken from the living rooms, from the bedrooms, from the safe rooms, on many cases with pajamas. They were butchered in their homes. They were raped. They were beheaded. They were burnt because the government and the state and the army and the security were not there to defend them, which is the most fundamental obligation of a state to its citizens. Therefore, to come to the 240, not to the 240, unfortunately, to 101 that are still possibly, hopefully alive, at least the majority of them, and to say, no, there is a Philadelphia corridor which is important, and therefore we can wait. Until when? Until they will not remain. Now, I have to make it very clear. Terror has to be beaten. There has never been in our history of the last 76 years a more just and unavoidable military reaction than the counter-offensive of Israel after the 7th of October. Does anyone think that Israel did not have to respond and reach out for the killers, for the murderers, for the savages that penetrated into Israel, not with a plan to fight soldiers, but with one purpose, to kill innocent people? We had to fight back. And we fought back. And when we talk about it now, we don't talk now, we are not in October. We are almost in October a year after. And we are fighting more than 11 months. And in the course of these 11 months, we have broken down most of the military power of Hamas. And we killed thousands of them. And regrettably, perhaps unfortunately, perhaps unavoidably, we also killed many innocent Palestinian civilians inside Gaza. War against terror is not simple. There are not simple formats and patterns that can guide you how to fight terrorist organizations. When a terrorist organization is embedded in the urban centers of one of the most densely populated areas in the whole world, underground, on ground, underground of hospitals, of mosques, of schools, of kindergartens, and if you need to reach out for those who are hiding, it is almost inevitable that on the road to do it, many innocent people will be killed. And there is not a simple pattern to give an answer to those who argue that this is what happened. It did happen. I can say, as someone who was in charge of doing this kind of operation years before, and as an Israeli citizen who follows what we do, that there has never been one order given by any political leader in Israel, and you may know that I don't love some of them. But I can guarantee you that even those who I don't like and don't trust and don't support, none of them has ever given an order to shoot indiscriminately, no matter what. And no military commander did it. And yet it happened. So when we come to the 12th month of the fighting in Gaza, we have to ask ourselves now, how much further do we want to continue the fighting? How many more soldiers do we want to lose in fighting? What can be the possible achievement that is worth the cost of fighting and the risk of losing those who we believe are still alive amongst the hostages? I think that the growing number of Israelis, I believe the majority of Israelis, believe that now the time has come to stop it, to make an agreement, to bring them back, to pull out from Gaza, to bring in a security force made of Palestinians that are prepared to fight the terrorists and soldiers of military of Arab countries, moderate Arab countries, that are prepared to cooperate in order to combat the terrorists that will remain, and then to embark on what I think is the greatest mission of our generation, to conclude the historical conflict with them and try and bring peace. Now, I want to tell you something. Hold on. Hold on. Later, give me a bigger hand, okay? Hold on. Let's assume that we will do what I am not certain that is possible, because it's not so simple. It's easier to say than do. To eradicate and completely destroy Hamas, like that slogan which is used by someone, a total victory. Let's assume that we'll have a total victory, that there will not be one simple, one Hamas fighter alive, that even Yahya Sinwar will be killed. No Hamas. Finished. Complete. Then what? There are still 6 million Palestinians. What are we going to do with these Palestinians? What is the vision which is proposed to deal with this population of people that are sick and tired of being occupied by us for more than 55 years? Now, there are all kinds of historical backgrounds and explanations and arguments that can explain or try to explain what happened over the last 60 years that made it or turned it into what it turned out to be. All right. But right now, after 11 months or 12 months of fighting, of destroying most of Gaza, of losing so many of our own soldiers, our own citizens, of making almost 2 million Palestinians living in Gaza kind of homeless, without homes, with a plastic bag walking from one side to the other, back and forth. At this point now, what is our vision? I thought for many years, I've been fighting many years in my different capacities, first and foremost, of course, when I was Prime Minister, that our mission is to be able to overcome the rage, the hatred, the intolerance, the urge to avenge, and to try and embark on a process which is inevitable and unavoidable, to sit down, to talk, and to make peace. And this is what we have to do now. Not out of weakness, but out of conviction that having used our military power to defeat the terrorists, we have now to try and reach out for those who want to talk with us, to sit down with us, and to consider what are the best possible conditions to make peace that will satisfy our needs and equally that will satisfy their needs. And in my mind, there can be only one solution: a two-state. It's not simple, and it will not be simple, and it will be difficult, and it will be heartbreaking. And they will very often, I'm experienced, believe me, I dealt with them, I negotiated with them. They will do everything possible in order to to destroy the utmost patience that you want to exercise when you negotiate. But we always have to remember the most superior purpose which ought to lead us. And this is that we have to conclude once and for all the historic conflict which costed the lives of tens of thousands of Israelis and many more Palestinians. Most of us and most of theirs were innocent and uninvolved, but they paid their lives because of this conflict. And we have to establish a new process that will bring us into a new horizon. I pray to God, and I hope all of us pray to God, that this day will come soon after we have brought back the Israelis that are hostages now to where they belong. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister, normally tonight, as our congregation knows, as we begin September, I'd be speaking about our religious school, our nursery school, the start of the Stryker Center, our downtown campus, the activities of our family gather groups, of our clergy as they prepare for the High Holy Days. But in light of your speech, I think our trustees and the congregation would understand if I just said, we all pray for the success as you try to bring Tikkun Olam to that part of the world. And on behalf of Temple Emanu-El, thank you for honoring us by being here tonight and giving us your thoughts.